our thoughts on the JonBenét Ramsey documentary. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's go back. And welcome back to another episode of Gen X Unfiltered, the podcast.
What's up, everybody?
Hello.
Steve, Eric, nice to see you.
Good to see you guys again.
Yes, hello.
Before we start, I think all three of us are struggling with some level of illness. So some of us sound hoarse, some of us sound nasal, some of us just sound sick. I don't know.
I got sick about a week ago, and I passed on to everybody.
Yeah, so.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
It is the giving season, so Here we are.
I'm going with the whole, the episode of Friends where Phoebe has the cold and she's singing, and she has, the sexy, jazzy, soul-y, raspy
Smoky
voice.
voice, yeah.
Smoky voice?
Maybe we sound smoky and sexy right now.
I'm going to pretend that that's how I sound and not like a dying cat.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Hopefully
we'll go with that.
Bad,
Okay. So it is what it is.
Yeah, just so a heads up for everybody, obviously we're talking about our thoughts on the new documentary about JonBenét Ramsey. So we're going to be talking some pretty heavy topics here that involve a lot of livening, children, essays, a lot of not that pleasant stuff. So, if you're triggered by that, please tune out now, and we'll come by and join us again next week for a little more lighter fare. But this one's definitely going to be it's a pretty heavy topic, so be forewarned.
Yes, a little sensitive topic. Okay, so we watched the new documentary on Netflix. It's a cold case. Mm-hmm. Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey? Yeah, really quickly, I'll give a little 3-sentence synopsis for anybody who doesn't know JonBenét Ramsey or the story.
Yep, sounds good.
JonBenét Ramsey was an American child beauty queen who was killed at age 6 in her family's home in Boulder, Colorado, on the night of December 25th, 1996. Her body was found in the house's basement about 7 hours after she had been reported missing. She had sustained a broken skull and a garrote was tied around her neck. The autopsy report stated that JonBenét's official cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation associated with cranial cerebral trauma. Her death was ruled a homicide. The case generated worldwide public and media interest in part because of her mother, Patsy Ramsey, a former beauty queen, had entered JonBenét into a series of child beauty pageants. Before we start, though, I'm just going to take the stance that I am not referring to her as a child beauty queen. She was a child.
A child,
yeah. First and foremost.
A 6-year-old child.
We're talking about a child that got killed, yeah.
Yeah, they really, even, I remember this as a kid when it was going on, but that
it was all beauty.
It was all about the beauty, her being a beauty pageant contestant.
Doesn't matter.
It's she's a 6-year-old kid.
She was a child.
Yeah,
and we can go into our thoughts on beauty pageants as we get into this, but I can't do the child beauty queen. It's weird.
Yeah, she's a 6-year-old kid.
So the documentary was 3 parts. Each part was an hour or so. It was actually really interesting. Before we even get into it, had either of you guys heard of the case before? What was your sort of knowledge level of the case before watching the documentary?
Oh, I've heard of the case before. I mean, anybody who grew up in the 90s, I think couldn't not be aware of the JonBenét Ramsey murder case. Mm-hmm. It was all over the magazines, TV, everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Same thing. I remember when it happened clearly. Because it was everywhere. It was a huge case. And it's, and it kind of, over the years, it kind of popped up here and again. And obviously when the mother got sick, and even now, sort of, kind of touching on that in the document, with, TikTok and, the true crime stuff kind of becoming more of a thing again. Sort of, it keeps bubbling up. So, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So for me...
And I think what ties into that is the fact that the case was never solved, right?
Yeah.
Which is why it keeps lingering, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I remember it. I mean, I've been a true crime junkie, for lack of a better term, for a long time. But I remember it was Christmas time. My whole family was at the cottage, and I remember seeing it on the news. And I can remember exactly where I was. It's weird. I don't know why I remember. But yeah, it was a big story. And I think, like Eric said, the reason why it still keeps coming up, obviously, is because it's, what is it, 30 years?
1996. So almost 30 years. About 28 years, I guess.
28 years, and it's unsolved. And I mean, let's think about it realistically. I mean, will it ever be solved? I mean, we can talk about that.
Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, it's one of those things, watching the documentary is kind of curious, will they ever solve this? Is this one of those ones that they'll just never...
Well...
No.
They'll have lots of leads and thoughts and suspicions, but just never... actually nail someone for it.
Before we first kind of go through, the chronologicalness of it, I guess, first of all, again... And also just a disclaimer, we're just talking about us watching it. We're not true crime experts. We don't know every single detail of this case. This is just simply what we watched and our thoughts on it.
Very good point. Yeah, we're not a true crime podcast here, so we're not going to dig into the details and all the real facts and nitty gritty and cross-examine what we saw in the documentary versus whatever.
Shocker.
This is just our thoughts on it.
Yeah, shocker. Yeah. I am not a detective.
I wish I was, but I am not. So this is just have some Timbits. We have Timbits and have a chat. So
yeah,
there you go. Timbits and chat. Can't go wrong with that.
Little tagline.
Not sponsored by Tim Hortons.
I wish, but no, not. Okay, so first off, we have the immediate family. There's the dad, who's John, the mom, Patsy, the older brother, Burke, and then we have JonBenét. So Burke was 9, JonBenét was 6.
Yeah.
Now, the dad had older children from a previous marriage, which, they talk about a little bit. There's some significant stuff there, but that's the people that were living in the house.
Yeah, just the four of them. Yeah.
Like they said, Patsy was a former beauty queen. They had JonBenét in the beauty pageants, because I'm pretty sure, like, when I was watching the documentary at one point, I was like, can they just show us pictures of this child not dressed up like a 20-year-old with makeup on? Like, I don't want to see beauty pictures of her. I want to see her as a 6-year-old child.
Like, and I don't know if that's because that's most of the footages of her.
It's all the pageant.
But it's all the pageant stuff. Yeah. That whole world is, I don't get it at all.
It's a weird world. Yeah.
I don't get it at all.
No.
It sucks that we can't have fun things like this for kids. Beauty pageants, whatever. I do think it's ridiculous, the like wearing the like when they had some clips of her like home videos at Christmas, I was like, she looks so different because of all the makeup, and I'm like,
the makeup, like,
that's crazy. That's insane.
I don't get it at all. Like I said, I
don't think it's a fun thing kids should ever do. I don't think you should have kids competing with beauty standards at like that age. Because it sets the kid up for all sorts of like self-confidence issues as well, right?
And also the fact that unfortunately, whether it's it's fact, I mean, it is what it is, but unfortunately it's also a place for a lot of predators.
Well, even they talked about that. Like parents would say, like, there were certain people that they thought were weird in the crowds that weren't there, that didn't have kids involved.
Yeah, they called them observers.
Yeah, they kind of thought they were weird, and like some of the photographers that would do the photo shoot, people flagged them as kind of being creepy and stuff.
Yeah,
and it's just a weird thing.
It sucks that you can't just have a little you strip it away. It sucks that you can't just have a little contest with little kids doing cute things.
Yeah,
it has to get weird, and it's just it's what it is, and it sucks. And I think that was obviously why this was a big, like, that beauty queen part was big, because a lot of the stuff that kind of came out in the documentary, the people that were sort of, there was some people that were just predators.
Yeah. Oh, and sadly,
One of the photographers, like you touched on it though, one of the photographers who was shooting these pageants was, it got in trouble for, battling child pornography and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
and they said in his studio he had like pictures that weren't necessarily like child pornography, but they were like suggestive and strange.
But the parents who were there as the customers were like, "This is weird."
Yeah.
And then to see, the whole thing makes, I don't understand. But even just in general, beauty pageants, like, I don't really get the appeal in like the Miss Universe or Miss whatever, Miss America stuff.
I think if you are a grown adult and you want to go into a competition that's based on beauty
that's a different
and brains,
story.
No, absolutely.
Do your thing. But I mean, I think it's just whatever. I mean, it is what it is. She was in beauty pageants. Was that part of what happened to her? We don't really know. But
I mean that's there's a lot of speculation that yes, it is, or it's not. But
did it expose her to some people that had not great intentions? I don't know. Right? Like, we don't know.
No, exactly. And I think a lot of people held that against Patsy Ramsey, the mother.
Yeah.
Because obviously she was in a beauty pageant back in the day.
Yeah.
It's sort of weird. They keep referring to her as like a beauty queen, but like
she did one pageant.
She did one like the 70s, and that was kind of it seemed like. So it didn't seem like it was a whole huge part of her life. But
it's a story.
Yeah, but it seemed like.
Also, because though, so when they were talking about sort of the relationship, like, he's older than her. Not that matters.
Yeah, because it was his second marriage.
It was his second marriage.
Touched on that, but so this was he had kids from his first marriage, and then
what was he, like 20 years older than her? I can't remember
15,
what it was.
something like
15,
that.
20,
so, I mean,
he was like 35ish, and I think she was like 23 when they met.
Which isn't like crazy. I mean, they're both adults. Like,
not
whatever.
a massive like.
No.
10 years, but not.
But I mean, he had his own business. He was incredibly wealthy. I mean, she was, from all accounts, what I understand to be mostly like a stay-at-home mom. Like, her kids were her life, and they lived a very opulent existence. Like, they had
they did a really nice house and like
6,500 square foot house. And they briefly talked about his older children, and one of them had tragically died in a car accident, and the other ones,
his eldest daughter.
They all talk about how a wonderful dad he is, and he was caring and loving and generous and all that stuff. So I mean, I should point out, though, he was the main narrator of this.
I was really surprised. I was like, "There's no way that." But the John Ramsey, the father, was in it. His son was in it.
The eldest son from his first marriage.
That was
John
family, right?
John Andrew.
Okay, it was just the two of them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they had old footage of interviews with Patsy and John because she passed away. So
Yeah,
they
she
have old
passed away
footage.
from ovarian cancer.
So she
Yeah.
was sick when JonBenét was young. They talked about that quickly. She went into remission, and then she ended up dying from cancer like 10 years after JonBenét had died.
Yeah,
But let's just
yeah.
sort of really quickly talk about what they explained in the documentary that happened that morning. From what we can remember, again.
Yeah, yeah.
Specific facts, we don't have them. This is just based on us watching them.
Yeah, yeah.
So we may have a time off here and there, but so it was Boxing Day morning at like 5:30 in the morning, and Patsy gets up to go to the kitchen for something. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, then she got she gonna make coffee and stuff like just
Make
to start her
coffee.
day at like 5:30 in the morning, something like that.
She finds a ransom note on the counter. She freaks out. She runs to JonBenét's room right away because in there it says, "We have JonBenét."
Yeah, we
She-
kidnapped her and we'll return her safely if we get money and stuff.
Yeah, and so she ran to the room. She wasn't there. She woke up John, the dad. Everybody started freaking out. They called 911 right away. She
Yeah.
called. She said they had a couple of really close friends that live nearby that she called over just to be kind of like, oh my god, what
Yeah,
it's like,
support.
help
Yeah.
us
Right?
do something. Yeah,
Our daughter's
So-
missing. Yeah.
They're there. The police come, and the ransom note did say between 8 and 10 we're gonna call you.
yeah, yeah. It was a very weird ransom note.
We'll talk about that quickly once I do the brief little.
Okay.
And so, sorry guys, it's the cold.
Sorry, yeah, a little cough
You
there.
gotta work through it. So the police came. The police were like, okay, between 8 and 10, this is what you're gonna do if they call.
Yeah.
Be ready. Of course, nobody called.
No.
Yeah.
So the dad, John, I'll just say John. He was going a little stir crazy, sitting.
Oh yeah. I just rubbed the microphone by accident. I went like
I
this.
thought you were like.
No, I was itching my nose.
He did
We're
that.
all watching each other like a hawk to
I
make
know,
sure
I
we're not
know.
like passing out or something.
No. If I feel bad, I'm opening it right here.
It's a
Don't
day.
open the microphone. They're not
Yeah.
paid for yet.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
been a day. So at one point, the police, they're waiting for the ransom call. It comes and goes. Nothing happens. I think it's like 12 or 1 at this point. And the police said to John and the friend there, he's like, why don't you guys just search the house? Because you could tell they were going stir crazy. Now, keep in mind, these police are there.
Yeah.
John and Patsy, they had sent Burke to a friend's house. He wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then the 4 of their friends are all just mingling around this house. So
Just
keep
kind
that
of
in
waiting
mind.
for this phone call.
But they're in the
and-
house, free range of the house, just walking around, doing
Yeah,
their
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So the police were like, "Hey, John, why don't you, to keep yourself busy, go look around?"
Yeah, see if there's anything out of the ordinary or anything that looks amiss that
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe you didn't notice. Yeah.
So John and the friend, they start at the basement, which again, we can't. We'll talk about why they may or may not have done
Yeah.
things, but they go to the basement. He notices a suitcase under a broken window, but apparently the window had been broken a year ago, and he had thought it was fixed, but it wasn't fixed.
yeah.
But there was a suitcase under it that looked like it was used as like a stool.
But he specifically said that suitcase doesn't belong there.
there.
Yeah.
Like, he right off the bat, he's like, that's not.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be there. Something.
Right.
And there's
Yeah.
police video footage of the
Yeah,
basement.
they
I mean,
show
it
it
was
all.
it was like a basement with a lot of crap in it. So
yeah,
who
like,
knows?
they call it the train room, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like a bunch of kids
Had
stuff.
a
in
train
there
set in there and
yeah,
stuff.
That's just kids' toys
So
everywhere. Yeah.
he goes into a room that had the door shut. They called it like a cold cellar, basically just like a random storage room. He opens it and he sees his daughter lying there covered in a blanket. In the moment, she had tape over her mouth. So in his instinctual dad moment, he rips the tape off, thinking, I gotta help her,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
really comprehending the fact that she was clearly deceased.
Mm-hmm.
He grabs her, runs upstairs, puts her on the living room floor, and then, the police are like, oh shit,
Like,
Yeah.
because they were on, because the note clearly said,
we have her.
"We have your daughter. We've taken her. Give us it was like $118,000.
Yeah.
Give us her ransom, and we'll return her safely." So
Yeah. So that's sort of, she's obviously clearly
that-
deceased.
Yeah.
That sort of set the tone for the whole rest of the case, right? Because
Yeah.
that moment ruined the crime scene.
Well, I
Yeah.
think the fact that the minute the police came in there, the crime scene was contaminated because they didn't say, hey, sit in this chair and don't move. Like they
No.
were all
Yeah.
going through the whole house.
Exactly. The Boulder police, this was brought up a lot on the documentary. They botched the initial investigation.
yeah, because they were the one detective said he's like, we were treating this as like a kidnapping.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we weren't thinking of the house as a crime scene per se, which
Exactly.
is still kind of crazy because there was still
Well-
a kidnapping that happened there.
Yeah.
But then another fact was that they said that Boulder had 0 murders.
Well, that was
First
she was
murder.
the first murder of the year, and it was on Boxing Day.
Yeah.
So
And so there was
Yeah.
a lot of the police didn't really have a ton of experience
yeah, they
in
have
this kind of
do this,
stuff.
Exactly.
they do this once a year maybe. That And this is a very different scenario too. This is not like, hey, we found a dead body. It's like we think it's like a kidnapping and then all this, like, so it's a kind of a very unique situation to begin with on top of it.
So I think
they completely dropped the ball right off the bat, and it tainted everything.
And one of the biggest questions was sort of like, well, why didn't you guys search the house when you got there? Yeah, it's a kidnapping essentially with a ransom note, but why wouldn't you scour that house?
Well, because you don't know, are they still in the house? Or, like, there's obviously a note there, but you think...
Yeah.
My understanding what police do is that they would go and, hey, you guys stay here. We're going to make sure this is safe. Make sure
exactly. So secure the premises, right?
That's what I think they would do.
If you remember, they did do a really brief search because they went to the basement and they saw that room but they didn't open the door to the room. No. Like, it was just like a peek through. Like,
they passed right by it.
Yeah, the one thing they brought up a few times in this documentary is like the layout of the house is very strange. Like, it's a big house. Like they said, it was like 6,500 square. So it's a big house, but apparently the layout is very weird.
Yeah.
Like the family bedrooms are like a completely opposite sides of the house, and like you had to like go through the kitchen to get around. But then like it was just a weird. Even when they sort of did like that camera POV going through the house, it was like, oh, that is like weird.
Yeah, exactly. They said the house actually looks like small from the exterior.
Yeah,
but you get inside, you realize, wow, this is actually a really huge,
really big house, and it's not just a straight kind of like normal house. It's almost like it was built in like different sections almost.
Yeah, because I think it's like the top floor had been rented out as John and Patsy's like bedroom loft area.
Yeah.
Well, and then JonBenét, they specifically said her room was basically a level below them on the opposite side of the house. So they're like, it would be really hard to hear anything, which it's, I mean, no judgment to them. I mean, but oh my God, that's terrifying to have your be in a house that big and have your kids that far
I was
away
thinking
from
that
you?
regardless of whatever, I'm like, that's because, you know, obviously my parents, we had small houses, but like all the bedrooms were, all bedrooms were like within shouting distance of each other.
Yeah. Especially that young. I could say teenagers.
But have like a 6-year-old girl like sleeping that far away, like.
Just in the simple fact if she woke up scared or
that's
something.
Just
like,
not regardless of anything nefarious, but like if she's sick or crying or just anything, like,
So then really quickly, we'll just kind of go into a couple, like I'll just overview a couple of the theories and then we can just kind of backtrack and sort of talk about them. I think that's sort of the best way to do it because the whole thing was kind of talking about a few different initial theories.
Yeah, it kind of was.
So the initial sort of theories, I'll just blurt them out, one of the theories was that it could have been Patsy because apparently she got mad at JonBenét for wetting the bed.
That's the one theory,
That's the one theory. She freaked out. Another theory is that Burke, the 9-year-old, got angry because she ate some of his snack.
Yeah, that was the other theory, that her older brother did it. Yeah.
Did they actually ever really have a theory that John did it? I don't remember.
I think they
Other than
did,
like, he might have done it, but like why he might have done it?
I don't think they went so far as to give a motive that I remember.
But just he was a suspect. I mean, clearly.
Yeah, just more like, that he was
there
assaulting his daughter. That was kind of more the illusion that he was potentially...
Well, we should really briefly say that. I mean, she was obviously found with her skull cracked, strangled, and she had been, unfortunately, assaulted. So there was...
awful. Just listen. I knew it was obviously a brutal murder, but then they hear him more, like, God, Lord, and they said you could see on her neck. They knew she was alive because she had scratch marks where she was trying to pull at the string.
I don't even want to get into details. I'm not going to go into all the details of how she died because
so sad. This poor little 6-year-old kid. Like,
it's just terrible. So they had, I mean, clearly in any investigation, when you don't have anything clearly like whatever, clearly you're going to look at the immediate people who were in the house at the time.
Well, I think that's sort of natural that the first suspects would be,
because that happens all the time, right? It's like someone you unfortunately is the murderer.
Well, I think they say like the percentage.
Someone who knows the victim. I mean,
usually you're not murdered by a total stranger.
So really quickly, I want to mention also too another theory that came in. I'm not saying that these theories were all necessarily I can't remember exactly whose specific theories, whether it was the world's theories or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then there was another theory that John covered it up because Burke had done it. He wrote the ransom note to cover it up.
Yeah, there's all sorts of theories.
All sorts of theories.
Yeah.
Now, I should note before we get any further that all three of them, I mean, Patsy's now deceased, unfortunately, but I mean, all three of them had been 100% like cleared of being suspects.
Right.
Eventually.
Yeah. Because there was a key piece there. The DNA they found on JonBenét, none of it matched family members' DNA.
Yeah.
And it also didn't match anybody in their database, which was frustrating because that kind of
they thought someone would it matched somebody. Yeah, it didn't match anybody.
So days go by. They're trying to figure it out. John Ramsey
The father.
gets the father gets a heads up from a friend of a friend or whatever that, hey, like, they're like looking at you as a suspect, because all this time he's like, we're helping the police, we're giving DNA, we're giving everything they want, and we have nothing to hide. So I'm gonna die on this hill and say they did the smartest thing ever, no matter how it looks. But the first thing he did, as soon as he found out that, he got an attorney for the family, and they stopped talking.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about this stuff, but I've seen, I watched Making a Murderer, and I've seen a few things about it, and it's pretty
Get an attorney.
Get an attorney.
Even if you're innocent.
Basically, the way what was happening, it's true. The cops think that it was the family.
Yeah.
They're going to find a way to say
So we
it's
are
the
trying to
family.
now make the narrative fit that you did it.
Exactly.
We're trying to find the clues that point to you.
Exactly. All that
We're
evidence.
We're not looking at like this as a broad open, like, who done it.
No.
It could be anything. It's like, no, we know you did it. How do we prove you did it?
Exactly.
And we're going to try and talk to you and get you to trip up to give us what we need.
Yeah.
So you get an attorney, because, like I said, you see all these horror stories that...
Well, so they took a lot of flack, right? It's like, what are they hiding? If they're innocent, why did they get an attorney?
Yeah.
And I don't care. Get an attorney.
Yeah, because that's the basically the side the police took, right? It's like, why aren't you talking to us?
Well,
what are you trying to hide?
That's
that's
what it is.
The narrative they always put out there, right?
That's
And what
exactly
did
it.
what did the
are you hiding?
lawyers?
What are you not
I don't
saying?
know why I'm calling them attorneys. We're Canadian. They're lawyers. But what did the lawyers? Attorneys sounded weird. But what did the lawyers say? Like, to the Ramseys, he's like, exactly what Steve just said. He's like, everything you say, they will find a way, whether it's like it's twisted or interpreted
or whatever, but they're trying to
because John Ramsey's like, no, I don't want to stop talking. I need I want, like, I'm innocent.
we have
nothing to hide.
We want to figure out what the hell happened. Like, we
And
want
they're like,
justice here.
Just don't. And I will say, like, honestly, I mean, that probably may have ended up saving them from potentially being further investigated.
No, 100%.
Or indicted.
Yeah.
Because the cops thought it was them, so they're just trying to prove it. They're not trying to not prove you didn't do it. No, not at all.
I don't care how weird you think it looks. If you're just get a lawyer.
Yeah.
Oh, you see
They're
that
there
all
to
the time.
protect
Now
you.
you hear, like, I've seen, lots of these. Like I said, the biggest one for me was watching that Making a Murderer, where, like, especially that one kid, like the 16-year-old who was, like, autistic or whatever, and, like, basically confessed to this murder. I was like, can I go back to class now? They're like,
he had no understanding of what he was saying.
You just confessed to murdering somebody.
Yeah.
You're going to, and he's still in jail.
Always exercise your right to have an attorney present when you're being questioned.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just do it. Ugh, it's just terrifying. So we'll kind of again do an overview, keep going through the timeline, and then kind of go back and sort of talk about each thing. So so there was a grand jury. They tried to take it to the grand jury. I kind of got a little bit confugled. Confugled, is that a word?
Confugled?
Conjugal, that's my new word. Because I was sort of in and out of the room when they were kind of talking about this, because I had to blow my nose out of sickness. We just watched this yesterday. Anyway, but there was a grand jury, but there was two. Did they initially take it to the grand jury to indict them for murder, or was it just the child abuse?
No, it's just, I think it was for the murder.
The murder, because it got like, they were like, no, the grand jury said no, which means they didn't have enough evidence.
Yeah.
And then, though, they tried to go back for the child abuse, and I thought that did go.
They did.
Yeah.
That was the one they said they could get them on a child abuse.
They could get them on child abuse.
But the DA wouldn't sign the indictment after that, because
they were like, it's not
what we want.
It's not the case is not strong enough here that it's just not.
So I mean,
it's not good. It's not going to help anybody.
Okay, so as the years went on, people started kind of coming out of the woodwork, kind of in a weird, odd way, being like, "Hey, I did it. Hey, I was involved in this."
It's so crazy to think people would do that, but people obviously have.
Some people want attention. I guess
they
it's
have
a weird
some
thing.
Mental health issues that whatever. Yeah.
So you just reminded me, Steve, as we were taking our quick little camera reset break, that there was the photographer.
Yeah, one of the photographers actually worked like
the pageants
and actually had like done some photo shoots with JonBenét Ramsey and like other people, but they actually
investigated.
Yeah, because they ended up getting charged. They had child pornography and stuff like that.
But
they actually got arrested.
he had a whole bunch of pictures of her and stuff, like
Yeah,
a shrine
like
to
a
her.
shrine to her or someone at his office or something like that. Yeah, it was weird.
Again,
Yeah.
this is why.
But
this
no,
whole-
he was all cleared because of the DNA stuff, right? He didn't match the DNA.
Yeah.
So,
Again,
but,
the DNA didn't match. Yeah.
But I think he ended up going to jail because he had like child pornography, and
Other
stuff like that.
yeah.
But for the JonBenét stuff, he was clear of that.
So there was a photographer, and then sort of the biggest one that was kind of like what the world and the family were kind of like, oh my god, this is the biggest break. There was this guy this guy named John Mark Carr.
Yeah.
And he reached out to the police. Was it the police detective? Investigative reporter.
Yeah, it was an investigative reporter who's actually, he's in the documentary a lot, this guy, the reporter.
So
Michael Tracy.
He started email corresponding with Michael Tracy, the investigative reporter, for a couple of years, it says. We don't know the exact timeline, but a couple of years they were going back and forth. And basically this John Mark Carr guy was a big part of the documentary.
Yeah.
He was confessing that he did it, but he's like, you're never going to find me. Like, I'm an expert. Like, you just don't even try. You're never
yeah,
gonna
he
find
was
me.
like, I'm nowhere near anybody. I'm off the grid.
He
I
basically
can
said, like-
escape from anything. I'm like an escape artist, he said.
He says he's an escape artist. He said if anyone tries to find him, they'll just run into a brick wall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even
Dead
my
end.
phone numbers, the email addresses I'm using, like they're all go nowhere. And
Yeah.
I'm a ghost.
But he confessed. Now, interestingly enough, he did say a lot of facts. But I mean, there was a lot of public knowledge on everything, like the ransom note, which we'll talk about again. Like all that stuff was public knowledge. So he really wasn't saying anything that most people didn't already kind of know.
Yeah, with the exception of
Right, what I was gonna say, but the exception of, I mean, we don't really know why he knew this.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
So they decided, like, hey, let's ask him a question that, like, the public wouldn't know.
Yeah. Try
Right?
and see if he, test him.
So they asked, like, what JonBenét would call her grandmother, and he got it right. It was, like, Nettie or something
Nettie
like that.
was her nickname. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he got it right, so they were like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Like, damn, maybe this really is, like, a thing, right?
Yeah, because that was the whole thing. This guy wanted to talk to Patsy Ramsey. He wanted
was
He wanted
obsessed with
to
it.
apologize to her
Yeah.
face to face. That was his whole goal.
Yeah, he thought if he apologized to her, she would forgive him.
Yeah, or
I'm
something
like, which is crazy.
Yeah,
But
that was
Now-
his whole thing. He wanted because he knew she was sick. I think.
Well, she
so,
was
like-
dying at this point.
Yeah, but
she
he
was.
insistently, or at least he could talk to her on the phone. Something
Yeah.
he wanted to apologize to her. It was-
I mean, he's clear. I mean, whatever.
yeah,
Yeah. But she was. I mean, for lack of a better word, she was actively dying at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
they said that. I think John had said that she was, the cancer had gone to her brain. She was not really
so
with it,
yeah.
and they had actually literally decided to just stop treatment and just kind of like let her die peacefully,
Yeah.
as peacefully as they could.
Yeah.
So this went on for a couple of years. He wanted. It was a picture of her, of JonBenét.
her last picture.
Her last picture, he wanted it. So they were going to email it to him. But then one of I don't know who it was, somebody, whether it was a coworker of his or the police, said, why don't you offer to send him the original?
Yeah.
Right? Trying to get whatever.
See if we can get him.
Yeah.
to-
Nab this guy.
Yeah.
So, of course, because, I mean, he's a predator. He's not, he was like, yes, I want the original.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like, here, send it to this place in
it was a mailbox in Thailand.
Thailand.
Yeah,
Bangkok.
A mailbox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, he's like, even though I'm really far away from it, just send it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, they send it. They end up watching him.
They're surveilling the entire time, yeah.
They find him. They see him. They surveil him for, like, I think a week or two.
Yeah.
And then it was in, what was the year?
What year? 2006.
2006 when they arrested him.
Yes.
So
He was
they
arrested in 2006.
They arrested him. It's in Thailand. The arrest procedure is a lot different there. So there's a lot of video footage of him being presented to the public, and he obviously waiting extradition. So he admits it. He's like, I did it. Like blah blah blah.
He was also working as like a
teacher.
Elementary school teacher.
like elementary girls,
Yeah.
school, all girls
Yes,
school, yeah,
which is
It's
just terrifying
so
in
scary,
itself.
yeah.
I mean, whatever. I'm gonna judge because he's not a good human. I mean, he fit this sort of.
He's
Creep vibe.
he fled to Thailand because he was up for
Yeah.
charges in the States,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's how he ended up there in the first place. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
he was fired from working in the school system because of not necessarily sexual messages, they said, but inappropriate messages.
Yeah,
and it
that's
caught
right.
the attention of parents.
Inappropriate the way he was talking to the students
So
and stuff.
he kind of
yeah.
just like trickled off.
Yeah, he FO'd when
Off to
overseas.
Thailand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrifying. Anyway,
Yeah, super
they
scary.
arrest him. They extradite him back to the States. Yada yada yada. There's no DNA match. They can't. They're like, no, you're not. Like, and then
Yeah.
they're like, all the stuff you're saying is nothing.
But the crazy part about that was when they first arrested him, and they were showing his picture on the news, and then JonBenét's father was saying that their housekeeper called him right away and was like, that man was in your garage a year ago. A year before JonBené died. He was snooping in your garage, and I saw him.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So it's like, when they said that, it's like, so he was around.
Maybe that's how he figured out the nickname Nettie.
Yeah, who knows? But it was just so weird that.
But this is the full circle back to what we're going to kind of talk about is like, you know, the DNA, right?
Yeah. The DNA, he didn't match the DNA, so I was like, okay, they cleared him of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, he had to be cleared. They had no way to convict him. I mean, just somebody, like, again, he wasn't the first one to kind of just be like, I did this.
There's a few people that come up and popped up saying, confessing to it.
It's a weird thing. We can't understand it because, I mean, let's be real. We have people have mental health issues doing this stuff. That's what I was going to say. We think logically.
Exactly.
We can't understand why people would do it. But, whatever. So that kind of like after that happens, there's no real like nothing.
No,
that was sort of the biggest sort of, oh my gosh, there's a break in the case.
Yeah, it was like, hey, we got him. And then, it turned out, no, we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, that's where it's kind of left. But I think to circle back to one of the main reasons, at least in my opinion, I mean, you guys can say, you know, your opinion on it, but at least my opinion on why they haven't captured or found out who did this is because the crime scene was so botched and any DNA evidence they got was just contaminated.
Well, and that's what they think. They think the DNA is contaminated that they're using. So they basically were saying the point, like a lot of them made that basically nobody's been eliminated as suspect because the DNA that they have is tainted and it's corrupted. I don't know what that
inadmissible.
What that means. I don't really know how that works in DNA, but they're basically like, we need to retest it again because what the samples we have are
think
useless.
about it. Yeah. Think about it. So her body, like just speaking very like, you know, point blank, her body is the biggest canvas for the DNA, right?
Yeah.
And what happened? And I'm not necessarily, I mean, we can't understand in the moment being a parent and seeing your daughter like that, right?
Yeah.
But what's the first thing he did? He ripped the tape off. He grabbed her, cradled her, ran her upstairs, through the house, on the floor. Other people, the mom was probably touching her before the police had a chance to stop. I mean, right there. So right there, the biggest DNA on her is going to be the dad because he's the one that picked her up. But any trace amounts of DNA, and this is also 96. I know DNA was sort of popping off, you know, O.J. Simpson.
No, it was still relatively new.
But it wasn't as now. I mean, they can catch anybody from anything.
Well, now they have a lot. I think the way they collect it, the way they can advanced. Process it and stuff like that. Because I think it's the process of it that's the problem. I think that was the issue with it. It's not so much.
But it's also contaminated.
But I think it's contaminated in that it doesn't match anybody. It's not that it's not that it's the wrong person's DNA. It's that it's been corrupted.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so it's not that it matches John's. It's not because your dad picked it up. That's the problem.
But the dad picking it up can mush it all around. So the dad so maybe there was trace amounts of DNA on the, you know, perpetrator that was left on her, but the dad picking her up and whatever, it can get rubbed off.
But I think what happened is they're saying they took it from like underneath her nails.
Right.
Yeah.
And whatever they do to process it, they screwed it up.
Well, there was levels of screw up.
Yeah. But so what they want to do now, their whole big push is they want to go back and there's other pieces of DNA from underneath her nails that has never been touched before. They know it's okay.
Collect that and process that.
That's what they want. That's what they're trying to get the courts to do. But now they're not doing anything.
But it's
all going through the process of the courts. But that's what they're trying to do is get that fresh DNA tested.
Yeah. But how fresh is it?
It doesn't matter. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
It's the problem is whatever they took originally, somehow they screwed it up. So it's never going to match anybody because they put like rubber alcohol in it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I mean, it's tainted. It has nothing to do with the father picking her up or something like that.
Well,
it's because of the samples they took. They screwed it up so that they're just like junk.
It was tainted.
So everybody that they've tested, basically, sort of that's the point they're saying is that nobody's actually been eliminated from this case because the DNA that we've been using as our litmus test is wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the parents should still be looked at. The brother.
Well, everybody should, but I mean,
there's Mark or whatever his name is.
John Mark Carr.
But that's my
John
point.
Mark Carr. All these people are still on the table.
But that's my point.
The DNA is wrong.
Is like this guy. I mean, he very well could be the person, but because of the DNA, I mean, it's just so
what's crazy to me is that they just don't resample the DNA. I don't understand. Like, I have no idea what that is.
Because you can't just do that.
Why not? They're cops. It's an open case. Like, I know that's what I'm saying. Like, why not? I don't know why.
It seems like the process is blocking like solving this case.
That's what I'm saying.
There's clearly a reason why, like a procedural reason why. Like, I don't think cops can just go. I don't know. I'm not a police officer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't understand because it's an open case. So like, that's what I'm saying. I don't understand why they just can't do it.
Well, I mean, there's obviously reasons.
Yeah,
but
it seems so stupid.
It doesn't seem like a logical reason. That's all.
It's like,
but it could be anything from, it could be resources, it could be like it could be so many things that
it could be. I mean, it could also be like, hey, we kind of dropped the ball on this thing, and we look like a bunch of morons, and we don't want to go through like
obvious,
you know, so which I think a lot of that comes down to that. It's not so much, hey, we want to solve this thing and go get the bad guy. It's
but
let's be real. It's been 30 years at this point too, right?
Yeah.
Like. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
a lot of stuff has happened.
Not that that's a reason to not find the person.
But
it's funny because, like, in 2008, the Boulder police actually, like, apologized to the Ramsey family and said, exonerated them, said, you're all innocent of this case.
Yeah.
Well, they had to, because they were getting so much, like, well, it was the oldest son. Like, rumors started that he had done it, and he was this weirdo kid that killed his sister.
He ended up suing because it came out in, like...
CBS did a show about it, basically saying this is how he would have done it.
One of their investigative report shows.
And so, I mean...
He sued him like $700 million or something.
Yeah.
And they settled and all that stuff. But, I mean, the police eventually had to come out and be like, look, like, he is not a suspect.
Yeah.
He was 9 years old.
He's never been on our radar.
Out of everyone, they think of, like, he's 90. I mean, could a 9-year-old do some of this stuff? Probably. I don't know. Like, it seems really far-fetched.
Here's the thing, though. So, like, the one thing that keeps getting my brain confused is the whole, like, ransom note. So, was the initial plan that it was actually somebody that came in, wanted to take her, and actually wanted money, but something happened and they realized the window, he couldn't get her out, or he, started doing bad things to her and she ended up dying, so they panicked. Like, I just don't understand, like, was it initially actually a kidnapping? Like, it's weird.
It's so hard to say. But remember Lou Smith, that detective who came out of retirement to investigate?
Yeah.
And he kind of took the case down a different path. He's like, look, like, because the Boulder police were like, for someone to get into that window would have been super hard to do. They couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And then Lou Smith, he was like, 76 years old.
Yeah,
and he's like, look, like, I can do it. It's not so hard.
Yeah.
He's like, so, like, you shouldn't, like, take an intruder off the table here as a possibility.
No. I
Yeah.
mean, and again, you have to think about the fact that this house, so if it was an intruder, it could have been okay, let's think about this, go as an example of that Elizabeth Smart case where she was literally, wasn't even in a mansion type house, was sleeping in the bed with her sister, and somebody came in and physically removed her and left the house. So it can happen, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
and these people were in a 6,500 square foot house, but I just wonder, like, was the intention to actually... I feel like the intention was probably to take her with them.
Yeah.
But I think to get back out that window...
Yeah, it was
they couldn't carry her.
Yeah.
Or maybe she fought. Maybe she yelled. Maybe she screamed. I don't know.
But then, because they were saying, like, she had, like, stun gun marks on her and stuff like that, too. So that's the thing. It's such a...
They can't
It's so hard to figure out what the hell...
They can't
to pin what exactly happened. It's not... It's almost impossible.
Well, here's the thing. So for the autopsy, I mean, once they initially were like, oh, she was strangled. That was the cause of death. They did the autopsy and they found out that she had a crack on her skull, like 8 inches in the front of her skull.
Yeah, the whole skull was crushed
and they basically were like, they couldn't 100% say which one happened first that she died from. So did she get a hit on the head and then they strangled her? Did they strangle and then hit her on the head? And then they can't even pinpoint what struck her in the head.
The object.
No, they thought maybe it was a baseball bat. There was also a flashlight, but neither one of them had any sort of clear marks.
But the baseball bat was found in the yard.
Yeah.
Remember? It was weird.
But if someone went left the house and ran away, they might have dropped it.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole bunch of rope that was found in one of the spare rooms that...
Yeah.
They said didn't belong there?
As far as they know, the family's like, it's not
our
rope. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. When I initially, like, based on hearing things over the years and reading things, and, like, I was like, oh, it had to have been one of the people in the house. I do have to say, whatever it matters, like, sort of your initial instinct on, like, watching something, that dad had nothing to do with it.
I don't...
Not a chance in hell.
Honestly...
Or he's a really good actor.
The Ramseys are the easy answer.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the cops go after them so much, is because they're the easy answer.
Well, of course, because everything else is like, what happened? Like,
yeah, because it's such a
crazy scenario.
Yeah, it's a very bizarre story.
But I don't
You
think
know.
that dad had anything to do with it. A lot of people, there was this, sorry, I'm judging, but there was this weirdo. Was she like a police officer? Yeah, she was there
She was
that
a
day.
detective, yeah.
She was a
Yeah.
detective, and she was like a little dramatic in my mind, wanting the attention, but she was on like talk shows, and she's
Well,
like,
she went on talk shows or right
when
away that
I
sort of...
looked him in the eyes, I knew he did it. He had evil in his eyes. He was too busy looking through mail to worry about it. He wasn't crying. He wasn't this. And there's one thing I've learned from watching lots of true crime and interrogations and all this kind of stuff. Yes, there's a baseline of how you expect people to react when their loved ones are,
Yeah.
Yeah.
when they're told horrible news about their loved ones.
Yeah,
It is a
yeah.
baseline. But also, until you're in that situation, you never know how you're going to react. Are you going to break down hysterical? Are you going to go into shock and just be like,
Well, exactly.
You
that's-
don't know.
And this
Yeah.
is, and especially because at this point, like, you know, they didn't know.
she wasn't found yet?
Yeah, it's like your daughter's been kidnapped. Like, it's just
So,
just
I mean,
to comprehend it, be like,
Yeah.
what the hell is going on?
he
right
kind of
now?
laughed at that, and he was like, he laughed at her accusation because he's like, I was looking through papers to see if there was other
He's like, a
ransom
bunch of
notes.
mail came in the front door, so I grabbed it and was just
Looking
Was
to
there
see.
another letter in there or something potentially? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, again, we can never judge somebody in those situations.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you know, obviously there's the crazies out there who are clearly like not in their right mind or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, like general people, like, I mean, at this point, this man hadn't even found his daughter. But I mean, you just wake up to find this note that your child's missing. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, sometimes you wonder too. It's like because you know it became pretty clear pretty quickly that the detectives and the police really did kind of drop the ball right off the
They
bat.
did a lot.
Oh yeah.
How much of this is them trying to save face and stuff
Of
like that too? You know,
course.
there's all that stuff. There's all these politics that go into this shit as well. That it's
Well, even
Yeah.
one
It muddies the waters.
it really does. It really
Even-
screws it up a lot.
even one of the detectives, I think, had said, I mean, I apologize if it was a detective or police or whatever, but one of the detectives did eventually even say, like, he was admitted, he's like, yeah, like, we should have sealed off this. And
Yeah,
we
they-
That was
should've-
Bob Whitson, like one of the early detectives who was on the scene.
I mean,
Yeah,
he's
he
just-
basically said it, but his sort of. I won't say his excuse, but his reasoning was that we thought this
didn't-
was a kidnapping.
but
so
even
Yeah.
still.
it's still a crime scene, but he was like, we didn't think there was a body in the basement that, you know, so they didn't. And again, I think it's because they didn't do this very often that they
No.
just didn't really know.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
It's just it's so bizarre. And even like, so like, you know, the ransom note is a big topic of discussion. And I mean, you know, a lot of the I'm assuming it was that detective because he was in it a lot.
Yeah, Bob Whitson.
Bob Whitson.
Yeah.
I mean, even he said, like, so they had taken the ransom note to get, like, they had their handwriting analyzed to make sure it was neither one of those.
Yeah,
and that was
yeah.
clear. Like, they're like, no, it's not their handwriting.
Yeah.
And they're like, it was just it was clearly not a ransom note from, like, professional kidnappers.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that it was like they said, $118,000 is a very
But
weird
that,
number because most of it would be like, give us $1 million, 500,000.
But that,
Some
and
sort of a nice round number.
But
it was long and, like, blurby.
that and also the $118,000 was the exact same amount of money he got for his Christmas bonus.
Which
Nice,
is
like-
nice bonus, by the way. But
Yeah.
you know, but they were like, if these people were in the house earlier when they were away, you could have gone into his office and he had,
Oh,
he
yeah.
had like whether
His
it was
papers are out there.
pay stubs
Yeah.
or whatever that you could have seen that
That number.
Yeah.
that number. But they're like, that's, you know, it's a unusual amount. They kind of said.
Well, and this is where my brain goes, and I don't know. They never said this, and I mean, but it was 1996. I mean, I'm sure people did, but were like home security systems a big thing back then? I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, they were not as advanced as they are now.
But did they not
obviously.
have one on? I don't know.
Who knows? Maybe they didn't even have one at all.
yeah.
I mean, you
But
know,
I'm getting to guess it's probably not. I mean, if you live in a city that's, you know, like one
Relatively
murder a
safe.
year or something like that,
Relatively safe. Yeah.
you probably may not be thinking about that too much. I don't know.
no, but
no.
that's what I mean. Like, I just think of these things. But I mean,
Yeah.
again, like, I totally admit I was kind of like, oh, it had to have been somebody in that family. But there, and like I said, unless that dad is a really good actor, I mean, also too, like, almost 30 years later, why would he want to put himself out there? Wouldn't you just fade away if you had done this?
Well,
and
that's
just
what I'm
kinda,
saying.
like,
If you
hidden-
had done it, I was surprised that they were involved in this documentary at all. I just kind of thought they'd be like, oh, we don't want to.
Yeah.
Well, I
but-
mean, he's always been pretty like.
Yeah, well, I think they're still
Open.
they still want this to be
Well,
solved.
I
Like
think he
Yeah.
wants to be solved before he dies.
they're
I mean, he's
and
not a
that's
young
why,
man.
No, that's why they're pushing to have the DNA retested
Yeah.
and stuff. Get it
Yeah.
because it's like, I want to know what happened to my daughter.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, and he's not a young man, so I mean.
no,
you
he's
know.
80 years old now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just.
It's
weird.
crazy. Like, I think sort of like yourself going into this documentary, I really thought that like the Ramseys had done it.
Yeah.
It's in one way or another. I don't know which one.
And the only
of them.
reason
Yeah.
why is because the DNA doesn't match, so they got off, kind of thing.
Yeah, I didn't even know that much about the case,
Yeah.
but I
No,
just
that's
feel like
the same thing,
there was
yeah.
so much suspicion, like in the media, pointing towards the family.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, they must have done it without knowing a lot about this case.
Yeah.
But after watching this documentary, I'm like, whoa, like the documentary did a really good job of not pointing a finger at anyone in
No.
specific.
No,
Yeah.
they didn't point to
It was very
anybody.
unbiased.
Yeah.
It's very unbiased. They kind of showed a lot of different perspectives and possibilities.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
kind of why the evidence didn't lead to a definitive answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did a very good job of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't kind of tilt it either way. And then you had the police as well as the family on there.
Exactly.
Clearly have different viewpoints, so it was good to see all of
So
that.
after watching this documentary, I'm like, oh, I don't know if the Ramseys did it. I
don't think
I
so.
definitely don't feel like I did before watching this documentary. Where
No,
I'm like, oh, they must have done it. I'm like, I don't think they did. I'm
Well,
not
here's
sure now.
here's
no,
the
it
thing,
was
right?
the same thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing for the police, because let's be real, having the Ramseys as suspects is always good to have in your back pocket, right? If it's
Well,
unsolved.
it makes sense that they would be
But
suspects
for
to
the
start.
police to come out and vocally and publish and say they are not suspects, they are 100% completely exonerated, you know that they have nothing to point them as being suspects. Because if
Yeah.
they even had a tiny thing, they would hold on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that
there's
they kind of said that, it's
nothing.
like,
Yeah.
okay, they're clearly...
There's nothing.
But you know what's funny though? The DA that after 2008, a new DA in Boulder came in and he basically rescinded that statement.
Well, of course.
And he's like
because-
everyone's a suspect, kind of like what you just said. Now he's
Yeah.
like all possibilities are on the table again.
Yeah, so...
I mean, and
Yeah.
he's right, but I mean, I don't know. And you know, you can come back and laugh at me and say you were wrong, 100%. If 5 years from now it comes out that it was the dad, he's a very good actor. I'll give him that.
yeah, no...
Like, because I mean, at this point, like I said, 30 years later, being 80 years old, if you had have done this, wouldn't you just want to keep kind of fading away?
well, you
into
think
the-
you just want to not... Yeah, exactly.
like, ooh, it's been a good 30 years. Nobody's
Yeah.
come at me.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I don't know what you guys think. Do you think they'll ever solve this thing?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think
sadly, don't
I'm
think
gonna
so
be
either.
honest. I think if they ever do find some sort of match, I think the person's gonna be dead.
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
I mean, it's been 30 years.
That's the thing, depending on how old these people... Yeah, it's,
It might be too late.
yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I get it as like I would want closure. I'd want to know
yeah.
what happened.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I think the world wants closure. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been such
Because
a
even if John Ramsey passes on, like Burke is still he's like a relatively young man. Like
Well,
he's
he's-
still want to know what happened to his sister.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also because I mean, a lot of people have pointed the fingers at him, so to be like,
Yeah.
he wouldn't be, and I get why he wasn't in this documentary. He's like,
No.
I've got enough. I've been
Oh yeah. He's
painted with a
under
brush here
attack.
that I
with-
don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
I also should point out quickly that at near the end, like John Ramsey, he is remarried, and they, his new wife was on. She seems very lovely. I talk like I know them. Very lovely.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, she seems very supportive, and it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of this weird like. You felt really sad, but you could tell it just made him really happy. But like, so that in their new house, they were showing they have this like kind of little section where all their grandkids' pictures are, and JonBenét's pictures there because the new wife, I forget her name, she had said she's like,
Yeah.
John never knew JonBené as an adult. He only ever knew her at 6
Well,
years
she was-
old.
yeah.
So she's always going to be 6. So she's just like one of our little grandkids. And I was like, that initially you're like, that's weird, but like,
Yeah.
no, that's really sweet.
Yeah.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's 30 years ago, but
She's
she
6.
was only 6, and it's
Like you can't imagine her being a 36-year-old.
No, I mean,
She's sort of frozen in time that way.
no,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
So
It's just such
I thought
a sad
I thought
story.
it was really, really sweet that she was kind of just had pictures. She was like one of the little grandchildren.
Well,
I was
and
like,
that's
oh,
nice
cute.
that always there
Yeah.
with them. Yeah,
Yeah,
It's just a really, really, really sad story, and I forgot how horrific it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, and you can't help just the human curiosity. You want to know what happened, and we can all have
Yeah.
our theories, but I mean, okay, we'll sum it up. We'll each kind of quickly give our little sort of, 10-second. I mean, I think that somebody obviously I think it was somebody that knew the family, whether it was because they were in the beauty pageant circuit
Yeah.
or just whatever. Somebody came in the house with the plans to take her. That didn't happen for whatever reason, ended up unaliving her there, left. And that's the ransom note. I think, like I said, I think there was an intention to take her and keep her.
Yeah,
And it just didn't happen. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I'm mostly baffled.
I know.
After watching this documentary, I'm like to think of any sort of possible like like outcome of this murder. Like I can't just.
But do you have a theory
Yeah.
what you think happened? Like that was just my theory.
Honestly, like I think maybe it was like an intruder that came in the house.
Like, do you think it was random, or he knew the family?
There's probably just knowing, watching enough of these like cases is probably somebody who knew the family was connected in one way or another.
Or like maybe the family didn't know him.
I think there was some sort of a connection to the family, but I think it was somebody outside of the immediate family who did it.
Yeah. I think it was somebody connected to the pageant world, to be honest.
I think
Yeah.
so, something too.
Because
I think
she had
100%, yeah.
exposure to a lot of people.
I think it was some of that. And I think from the get go, I think the whole ransom note, I think it was like a red herring. It was just something to throw people off.
Yeah.
I think it had
Really?
nothing-
You
I
think
it
they
had
were
nothing to
that
do with-
smart?
I think it had nothing to do with anything. Yeah, I think it was just to throw people off.
Like the intruder did that?
Yeah,
And
yeah. It was just a way to throw people off, to
give
send
people more
whatever.
time
Yeah.
or something? I
Or
don't know,
that, or
it's
just to
weird.
throw people off. So they didn't know what the hell was going on. Because look, even now it's all confusing, right? It's like, were they
Yeah.
trying to kidnap her? Was it this? What the hell
Yeah.
happened? I think it was just.
I just don't
I don't think it was a whole lot of thought put into this. I don't know.
But I think
do it
that the
and-
note had a level of thinking about it, which I'm just trying to figure out how high that level of thinking about it was. Was it just a red herring to throw off, or was it actually the plan to use it to take her?
Yeah, nah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make any sense then.
Okay, so you think that the ransom note was a red herring, that it wasn't, there was no plan from the person to actually take her out of the house.
Yeah, or I don't know. Maybe
See, that's where I'm
yeah,
like-
I don't know.
I think that involves a little bit of intelligence. For
Or
that.
maybe what happened, maybe they were, once they did it, they're like, oh shit.
That's what I think
And
happened.
then they put the note there just as like a.
Well, I
I
think
think the note had nothing. I think the note was just to throw people off. I don't think there was any intention for them. They didn't want the money at all.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know about that, but I definitely think that I think that they plan to leave with her.
Yeah, maybe, but then I don't know. Why would they do all that stuff in the house then? Get out of there as fast as you can.
I don't know. Like I said,
Yeah.
maybe they tried, and maybe they realized, oh shit, because that window you had to climb up a thing, and if she was still, if the intention was to take her out alive, there's no way. I mean,
Yeah, but
she
she's
would
a
have.
6-year-old girl who weighs like 50 pounds. Like,
Oh yeah, but she kicking and screaming like this isn't my
yeah, but
mommy
they
or
stun
daddy.
gunned her. They thought. So.
Whatever. I mean, there's so many things.
Yeah, yeah.
we
So
don't know.
there's so many. I mean, we don't know, right? So
Well, of
No,
course
no.
we don't know.
I just think there was oh shit, this went south, and I'm just trying to throw people off so they don't look at me.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you said this. Do you think it was like one of the family members or?
No. I think it was somebody outside the
I
family.
think it was
Yeah.
somebody who.
It might be someone had to have seen her. I'm going to assume it would be someone in the pageantish world.
I'm not
or something
saying it
like
was
that.
anybody involved in the pageant world, but because of the public exposure she had from the pageant world, it was somebody who, stalked pageants of children.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think this was not a nice, this was a predator crime.
No,
Like,
I think it was
Yeah.
definitely someone that saw her in those things because I don't know how else you would know her.
no, and
Like,
you
I mean,
become, the predator mind, you become
Yeah.
obsessed. And it's just like, you know.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if it comes back that was that dude. Because why was the fact that he was in a garage and stuff like that? The guy
Yeah.
the guy that confessed to it. That
John Mark Carr.
I can't remember. Yeah, John Mark Carr. It wouldn't surprise me if it turned out to be him.
Yeah.
And he did know that nickname.
He
so
knew the
I
nickname.
don't
The
know.
fact that the nanny or their nanny or whatever
The
was
housekeeper,
like
yeah.
housekeeper was like that guy was in your garage like a year before JonBenét died. That to me is a very weird.
Super suspicious.
Well, don't they
Yeah.
always kind of say like the answer is usually right in front of you?
That's what Lou
Yeah.
Smith's theory was.
They
He's
just
like,
don't have-
usually, because he was like an expert, like a detective with murders and stuff, and he's like, usually the answer is right. It's
Well, because
right in front
the
of you.
easy thing is to get into these weird like,
Well,
oh my
because-
god, there's a ransom note, so it's this company because the ransom note made mention about like JonBenét or
Yeah.
John Ramsey's company, right? And we don't like the countries your company's working for, and
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
so it's easy to go down this weird rabbit hole of like, oh, we're looking at like some terrorist organization
But
from
it
overseas,
wasn't. It wasn't. It couldn't have been because it was such a
No, it's just some-
non-pro letter. Like
no, it's
it
just
was
somebody
some
writing
guy.
this shit to throw people. Again, I
Yeah.
think it was just to throw them off the trail.
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
all it was like,
And like
I've done this. They're going to try and find
Yeah.
me, so I'm going to leave this note, and hopefully they'll go look.
even how the letter was signed didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It was like an abbreviation like SMDTD or something like that.
Yeah,
It was just
some
some,
weird
some
like
letters
yeah,
that didn't
some like I think people wrote. So whoever wrote it was just, I think it was just a red herring,
Yeah.
just to be like, I think they're going to come looking at me because they're going to come looking to this pageant world.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw it to this like weird, random, fake like terrorist organization or something like that. So they'll kind of go down that road and hopefully just.
I think the problem is like the answer's right in front of everybody.
That's
but
what
the
I'm saying. I
problem with
think
the problem for the police and the prosecution is they don't have the evidence to.
that DNA
Yeah.
to get it checked again because until that happens, that's.
And I don't
Yeah.
think it is, honestly. I mean, the only way I think it is, which sort of kind of happens in this day and age, is just sort of like a social media pressure.
Which is absolutely bonkers.
It's crazy, but that's what happened with the Menendez brothers,
I know, but that's
right?
that's not right. That is,
Well, I'm
that
not
is
saying
wrong on
it's-
every level.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think that that's just how it
Yeah.
works. And
Yeah.
whether you said it's because the police don't want to admit their mess up, which is probably a big part of it, if it's
Yeah.
because, you know, the resources to do it or like I don't
No, I
know
know.
what it is.
Yeah, like politicking and saving face and
Yeah.
to obstruct justice is it's so disgusting.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, the
it's scary.
police
It's
probably
scary stuff.
the
Yeah.
police probably just wanted to be like, guys, it's 30 years. Can we just forget about this?
Yeah.
They're hoping it just goes away.
I mean, it's just. I mean, when it comes down to it, it's just a really, really sad.
Well, it's sad. There's this, this 6-year-old kid
Yeah.
brutally murdered on Christmas,
Yeah.
and no one's done any time for it.
No, exactly. Like how can this poor kid rest in peace for that?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Just
with
get
the
her justice
murderers
for her.
walking
Yeah.
around.
And let's not
Yeah.
to mention the fact, I mean, they never really said it that I remember, and it doesn't really matter, but I mean, just putting yourselves in the shoes of these parents, which you can't really do, but you can try.
Well, no, it's awful. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, also to mention the fact that, like, this happened in their own house while they were all there. Like, can you
Yeah.
just imagine how, like, absolutely, like, just guilty you'd feel?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, horrifically guilty. Like, it's...
Oh, yeah,
It just
yeah.
reminds me of that, like, Elizabeth Smart case where, like, and that poor sister who, when the whole time she was gone was, like, saw... It's just crazy, the guilt and the...
Oh yeah. No. Yeah.
awfulness
Totally.
and-
It's a horrible, horrible situation.
It's a horrible story. I hope that they are able to... The problem is for me, I'm a skeptic, I'm a cynical. For 30 years later, would I actually believe that, like, the DNA was right? Or, like, how annoying would it be if it was that guy all along? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just crazy.
No, I
Yeah.
know.
And I think that that's the problem, is it's been so just, like, kind of effed up the whole time that there's any answer, any person that comes up that they're saying, like, this is sort of who did it, like, it just makes, like you said, the police look bad.
Yeah. Exactly.
And nobody wants that. So...
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad. So.
But it was
hopefully-
actually a really good documentary. Like Eric said, it was super unbiased. At least I thought
Yeah.
so.
Check
I
it out.
thought so too. Yeah, definitely. Good documentary.
Yeah, 3 episodes, like 3 hours. It's definitely well done.
And
so
it kept
check
your
out.
interest.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
It's a fascinating case and a really well done documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it definitely makes you think about theories and what could have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Check it out. It's on Netflix if you guys want to watch it.
Yeah, comment below. Let us know if you've watched it or what you think, or if you have any theories. I mean, let us know. We always like
Absolutely, yeah.
discussing this stuff because we're just sort of discussing our thoughts on watching it. So we
Well, it
wanna,
was as a talk in terms of Gen X and stuff like that, this was a huge case in the
Yeah.
early
Early
90s.
90s.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
massive. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, it's still 30 years later, still going. So.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
All right, guys, but that's it for today's podcast. We thank you so very much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Take care,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Bye bye.